we are running out of time. So what we are going to do is that the next two issues, major issues that we have, we will deal with them in a very brief fashion. As you know, the EC has already announced that there is going to be an increase in the filing fees for the presidential candidates and also for parliamentary candidates. Presidential candidates are required to pay 50,000 Ghana cedis as the filing fees, and then parliamentary candidates will pay 10,000 Ghana cedis, and they will pick their forms, and by the 30th of September they would have to return them and the elections will begin. There are particularly the minor parties that are saying this is so wrong. Let's hear from Echo Duncan. What do you say? Some say these fees are out of reach, and that if you do it that way, most of the minority parties can't get any people to stand, for parliamentary elections, and the presidential elections might even be difficult for them.
Yeah, they want to continue their misrule, snuff out the poor ones.
Who want to continue their misrule?
Well, the people who are making this prescription, and if you look at the way the NDC,
this is the decision of the EC.
I'm coming. I know.
Often will be done through their account.
But who is the PR organ of the EC? I mean, if you look at the disputes that have risen on the EC, who is defending the EC and saying that the EC, every time what the EC is doing is right, no change, not when people who are participating in the process have a difficulty with it, the NDC is saying no. If you don't have a problem,
is it fair? And are you not overgeneralizing? Is it the NDC supports whatever the EC brings out
on essential issues, on major issues? This is what has happened.
Okay, on this issue, you haven't heard them, have you?
I haven't heard them, but what I'm saying is
let's hear what you have to say about the fees.
I think it is too high, and it's undermining democracy, because we need a greater number of people to participate in this. But let me justify this thing that I said, so that I'm not misconstrued. The point is that it is very difficult to understand the position of the NDC with respect to the many issues that have arisen out in connection with the EC. Okay? If anybody has a problem with EC, let the EC answer. Let them deal with it. If you don't have a problem with them, stay out. And let the EC address the issue, to the satisfaction of the people who are raising the protest. How are you turning out to be a PR agent of the EC? I don't see it. What interest do you have in it?
That's not a fair comment, and you repeat it.
It's not a comment. I'm just describing what has happened.
It's amenable to reducing this amount. What figure are you looking at? Presidential, 50,000. Parliamentary, 10,000. What figure are you looking at?
I don't know. What's 2,000?
What's affordable?
2,000
for parliamentary.
For parliamentary,
and then presidential,
5,000.
5,000. Okay, interesting. What do you say? You see, the argument also is out there that we've had mushrooming of political parties. Anybody just gets up and say, I want to be president, and they go about this country sort of doing things that are a bit, disgraceful in the name of wanting to be, because the constitution allow these things. So these are some of the ways to cut out some of these people.
Well, I'm not too sure about that because if you're going to use money, then there are a number of people out there who actually have the money to pay. So you are likely to get involved in adverse selection. For people with the highest bidder, just selling it to them, those that can actually bid, without looking at the key issues that are important, the structures.
The EC is looking at organizing what it says world-class elections.
So I don't think world-class
money to do that.
I don't think so. What is the motive? I mean, for raising the bar so high, just 50,000. So if anyone says that, okay, I can afford the 50,000, then the person qualifies. I don't think that alone is adequate to ensure a fair class elections. There are so many things that you have to look at. On my way here in Medina, I saw a poster, somebody trying to be a president, and his motto is that Ethiopia, Medina, that is his motto. You understand? Assuming such a person has the ability to pay, are you just going to admit that person because he can pay? So I think that EC has to go beyond just the monetary, because the EC is not financing or self-financing this exercise. It's solely dependent on government. So ideally, once you put together the requirement and the various conditions and the party meets it, I think that should be okay. Right. Just letting go some pittance should be fine, not just using it as a way to increase your IGF. I don't think that's right.
These are two men who are seeking for the first time to get to Parliament, of Ofuase Ayeribi, and then also for Bolga Central. Let's hear from you, Ike. You had been expecting that at least you paid the 1,000 that was paid in 2012, right? And now it's 10,000. Is that too much for you?
He has money. I think, fortunately, I have Kojo here, so I'll be picking my check from him when I'm leaving. No, but I think the biggest issue with this is that, yes, you want to be able to weed out people who will just not abuse the system because it is so easily accessible. But you don't also want to cut out so many people who will have a contribution to make to the development of Ghana and may not necessarily have the resources to do it. And so it's a very big challenge. I do believe that for the presidential, I wouldn't touch that, because to be a president is a very big issue. To manage,
you should pay 50,000.
I want to believe that we shouldn't have too many people contesting for the presidency.
What's the money for? What's the money for?
Well, that one EC would answer. But over the years, we've been paying those fees, and I do believe that, yes,
they have never been this high.
Yes, but for the parliamentary, that goes down to the grassroots about representing the people, and you may find people down there that don't have those resources, but will be a very huge asset to Parliament. And so we shouldn't discourage some of these people. But I want to say that the point he makes about the fact that the NDC has become the piece of the EC is rather unfortunate. We have major stakeholders in this whole exercise, and in this exercise, if you find that your other stakeholders or opponents are working to move the EC towards an angle that is favorable for them, you wouldn't just wait for them to do that, only for you to lose an election because it was unfairly structured. And so, as key stakeholders, yes, we'll make our views heard.
Implicit in what you have just said is to suggest that the EC is not independent enough,
all I'm saying is that the EC relies on inputs of Ghanaians, and we are also making those inputs. And so when, for instance, the MPP is lambasting the EC for something, and we have a position, we need to state our position, because we all have to contribute to the electoral process. And so we cannot sit aloof and say that because we are in government, if we open our mouths, we would have been supporting EC. But of course, if somebody does not find anything right with EC, that is also a big challenge.
Right. Could you?
Two
I'd like you to also look at it from a perspective of what I've heard some suggest, that this might even smack of unconstitutionality.
In fact, that's where I was going to go. That there are two quick points to this. The first thing is that the right to, stand for political office, may I say, some legal rights that are provided in the Constitution. Now, I am not too sure if the Constitution says subject to any administrative rules. Because if it doesn't say that, then for the EC to use a justification that you must meet a certain monetary threshold so that we can weed out, to borrow Ike's expression, we can weed out some persons who don't, I think, may border on constitutionality.
And again, these are not reasons advanced by the EC.
Of course,
they are speculative.
So that's where my mind goes the first time. The second thing is, I think that, again, if the EC makes the argument that this is to even pay for part of the process, then they might be confusing their position with that of political parties. Political parties charge exorbitant fees because they need to fund the process themselves. This is a state-run exercise. And so if I'm seeing clearly on the front page of the Daily Graphic, I think this morning, where you have a number of political parties raising a red flag that this appears to be a bit high, I think that in the spirit of collaboration, the EC should have a second conversation with.
But we have allowed the EC
parties
to increase the fees gradually to a certain point. Are we saying that this is the time where it stops, no more increase, or what?
In the Republic versus Kojom Pianim and Rekubrobe, the courts were of the view that the fact that something has been done over and over the years doesn't mean that if it's wrong, it should be allowed to continue.
Interesting. Well, like you said, some say at the level of the parties yourselves, you are organizing primaries and you are charging so much, and when it comes to the main elections,
because in that instance, the parties have to, pay for the entire process. This is a state-run exercise.
Right.
Else then we say that candidates should pay for ballot boxes and ballot papers as well.
But the EC is going to deal with papers. There are papers they are printing for you, filing, processes, nomination forms, everything, and they'll deal with all of these things. You are saying they've been paid for by the state.
It's a state exercise. That's how I understand it. Because if now you decide to...
Then there shouldn't be any fee at all.
Well, no. If now you decide to say that participants in the exercise ought to pay, then you are going into the realm where you are now saying that it's those who can afford to meet a certain monetary threshold. And I think that that may not be helpful to us. So I think it's a good time for the EC to have another conversation again.
No, but are we looking at whether or not the amount involved is exorbitant, or are we thinking that there should not be a fee at all? Because there are two things altogether. Because when Kojo makes the point that the fact that something has been done over and over again, it doesn't make it right. That would seem to suggest that the form should be for free and you should just file for free. So there are two things that we need to look at. Are we suggesting that it should be free, or are we thinking that the fee is too high? In my view, it is the fee that is too high. Yeah, I think so.
In a minute, Ike, what do you say about the cancellation of the tender for election results management system? We know they had shortlisted some companies, 3 of them, and they said they have taken them through the process of demonstration. And you remember the parties had to be present to see all of those processes. And they say for these following reasons, they are unable to continue with them, so they've cancelled the process. They say there was observed failure to meet the technical criteria and major deviations from the administrative criteria. There was also concerns about the technical ability of the tenderers to perform the project satisfactorily. The tenders submitted showed the need to significantly revise the scope of the project. For the above reasons, the Commission endorsed the unanimous recommendations of the evaluation panel and has decided to discontinue the project. Accordingly, the EC will augment its internal capacity to deploy a modest results collation and transmission system for election 2016. This system has been utilized successfully in the 4 parliamentary by-elections conducted by the Commission since July 2015. The system would be fine-tuned and demonstrated to the political parties and their stakeholders involved in the election results collation process before the December 7 presidential and parliamentary elections. And this a release signed by Eric Kofi Japasu, who is the head of communications. It became a very big issue with all sort of, very violent arguments.
For me, one is unfortunate to the extent that we've missed an opportunity to move forward and improve the system. And I'm not saying it's unfortunate because they should have gone ahead anyway, but because we couldn't find the right people to do the work. Okay. So that for me is unfortunate because all over the world, that is the trend. People are moving towards making sure that we're efficient in delivering our results, and that it shouldn't take too long a period. Because as the anxiety builds up, then it becomes difficult for people to accept some of these results, and all manner of speculation as to why the results is not coming is because they are probably tampering, all those kind of things. And so, it would have been good to have...
The last time we had the NPP announcing ahead of the official results.
So once it delays, then you still have some of those problems. So it would have been good to have a system that will be very efficient. But if in their view and in their own evaluation, they feel that the time is, the people that they are getting are not good enough, and therefore we cannot implement. And don't forget, they were also constrained by this whole debate as to whether it should be a foreign company, it should be a local company. That limited even the scope within which they could do some of it.
Do you suspect this has to do with time and...
I don't think so. I think that the EC, after the initial move to and if we pay attention to the conversation, to transmit electronically from polling stations.
I think they clarified that.
Well,
Yeah,
no,
their position was
there were
clear.
two different views. One expressed by Mr. Jakwasu and then one expressed by the EC boss, almost simultaneously. And I think the conversation at the time was that we should not transmit from polling stations because you have network issues. You have rather bigger issues of suspicion. It's easier, in fact, if you understand the electoral system of Ghana, it's easier to collate at the collation center, then you have the result per constituency, and then transmit that.
Yeah.
I'm happy. The English they use in this paper is that they're going to look at the scope again. They're going to discontinue the project. I think it simply means that they're going to go back to transmitting from the collation centers. I think it's a good thing. They should, strengthen the system so that we can all, see through it and be sure by the 9th of December who's partying and
There are suspicions around, and that this could come down to money and time. There's no time, there's no money, and perhaps that's why we have veiled the reasons into these ones. What do you say?
Well, I'm not too sure about that, but I'm asking, the political parties, were they involved in the assessment of this?
The demonstration, they were
The
present.
demonstrations.
Yeah,
they were
present
invited
see
to
it.
observe.
Observe.
They couldn't even ask questions. They couldn't comment, just observe.
Just observe. Okay, so there's some level of transparency in the process. So, so if they can testify to the fact that the people were not up to the task,
Right.
they have not raised any issue about what EC is saying, I think we should just be on the side of EC and let it go.
Mr. Duncan.
Well, let's look at the background to this dispute. I think it was something to do with STL and people making accusations that they have intervened in the submission of the results and that the results should no longer go to the strong room of the EC and so on. So the question is, what is the alternative? What is the alternative? If, it is the case that the declaration of the results is very transparent, at which stage is this transparency exhibited? Is it at the strong room or at the collation center? I think, the key word is transparency and good monitoring by every participant or contestant. I think that should be the key word. So either way, if the justification is on this basis, I think we should accept.
Right.